So for any of you who have been following my journey on Path of Exile 2 with my previous two videos, you would know that I started as an Infernalist for the launch of Early Access, and I was having a lot of fun with it, especially in demon form, but I ran into some issues with my build, and I ended up not being able to do an interaction that I thought would work, and it kind of just made me lose my drive to do more with this character. So after that, over the past week or so, I've been leveling this Invoker monk, and it has been by far the most fun and satisfying experience ever. Even with the small issues that I've run into with him, it has been way more powerful than I ever thought it would be, especially with very little investment. So I want to show you guys what I'm talking about. So the build itself revolves around basically three skills, but you could probably do just two skills and any other skill instead of the one that I'm using. But really, all it is Shattering Palm and Tempest Bell. That's all you need. It sounds ridiculous that you just need two skills, but it's basically you just use Shattering Palm on an enemy, or use Bell first. It doesn't really matter which order, but if you use Shattering Palm on an enemy, it'll create like this AoE, and then any enemies caught in that AoE, they'll have a debuff on them where if you hit them enough times, then they explode, right? Well, if they all have the debuff and one of them dies and explodes, then it basically creates a giant chain reaction of shattering explosions of ice. And it also helps build freeze really, really fast for some reason, especially when you combine it with Tempest Spell. Now, when you put the Tempest Spell down, it does big damage at the start, but then also it can be hit by all of your skills, right? It creates a damaging shockwave when you do that, and any elemental ailments that are applied to the bell also add to the shockwaves. So if you're using cold damage on the bell and you hit it with something else, it'll still proc that cold damage around it, which is kind of insane. So what I've been doing is I've been using Shattering Palm, Tempest Bell, and basically Tempest Flurry with Charge Staff just for some extra damage and range. Because when you use Charge Staff, it consumes your power charges to give you like these cool lightning projectiles. I can't really show you right now, but we'll get in a map soon so I can show you what I'm talking about. But Tempest Flurry hits really fucking fast. So it's actually insane what you can do to bosses with this ability. You just use Shattering Palm, use Tempest Bell, use Charge Staff if you have some power charges available, and then you just fucking lay into them with Tempest Flurry, and you just watch their HP bars just melt down in seconds. And honestly, it seems like you could do this with any other skill. You don't have to with Tempest Flurry. I just like the idea of combining lightning damage with cold damage. A lot of people I'll see they'll be doing just Ice Strike, or they'll be using a skill like the other shock skill. I don't remember what it's called, but there's like I think it's just Shock Wave. Um, I found that Tempest Flurry though is giving me the most DPS, and it helps kill bosses like crazy faster than anything else. Um, let's get into a map so I can show you what I'm talking about here. All right, so this will kind of suck because I have elemental weakness. I might die, but I do have capped reses. Well, I did have cap reses until that triggered, but and then we also have really high chaos res, which is nice. All right, so let me develop some power charges here. You can see those ice explosions already, right? See how it was only hitting like two mobs there? They all exploded, and then a chain reacted and killed everything for this like satisfying pop. So now we have some charges, so I can use charge staff to get these cool projectiles, right? With Tempest Flurry, it hits so fast. So we just Shattering Palm and then left click. Shattering Palm, left click. That's all it is. Sometimes they die in one left click because we have so much added lightning damage that they just like die instantly. Usually. But that's not even the big part, right? We haven't even used the bell yet. The bell requires 4 combos. So you have to hit something with a quarterstaff attack 4 times, which that counts. Let's get to a rare. Instantly blew him up after placing that bell. You just place bell down, palm strike, or palm strike them, and then place bell down, and then you just hit them with a few of these, and they just blow up instantly. Especially if there's other mobs around to trigger the the explosion, the ice explosion and shatter. And I found that this has been working for me since. Oh, actually, I used my portal. It's been working for me since the campaign. Like, I cleared all of Cruel difficulty just like this, with a very similar setup. The only thing that I've done is upgrade my weapon, like, a few hours ago. Like, well, I shouldn't say a few. It was yesterday or the day before that. I upgraded my weapon. So now we've got an idea for what the build does. Let me show you guys a bit more about our gear and also the passive tree. Um, so for this build, I found that I got this really nice staff that has like really high percent physical damage. There's no flat fizz though, so it's not ideal, but it still has really high base physical damage. Um, I found though that elemental damage has actually been working for me way better for some reason. Uh, I bought this thing for like a divine. It was not worth it, I don't think, but I just wanted to test it. I was using one of these down here for the longest time though. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think I was using, no, it wasn't that. Which one was it? Did I already get rid of it? Oh no, I was using this thing for ages. This thing carried me through the campaign. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, actually carried me. And it's not even that great. It rolled 82% fizz, which is pretty solid. But it also rolled a pretty decent physical, flat physical, as well as flat cold. I think they're both T5. So tier 3% fizz and then tier 5, tier 5. And that alone was enough to get me through the campaign. And I found that when I upgraded to this staff, I only gained about 2000 DPS. It wasn't as much as I thought I would get. Um, it's gone up a bit more now, but it basically went from I think like 4000 to like 6000 DPS whenever I got this staff. Let me see. Yeah, so we're kind of missing some stats here, but 5000 to 8000. It's not as high as you would think, right? I believe the reason for that is since we're doing like pure lightning damage, elemental, we get more damage scaling from elemental damage. Because if I look at this other staff here, it's a triple elemental. I think it's this one, triple elemental staff. I put this thing on. It's only 1000 DPS less, and we're missing our other skills. So even with the missing skills, we only missed like what 1700 DPS. Now this thing does have +3 to all melee skills, which is nice, but you would expect it to be a lot more damage decrease swapping to something like this that has like barely any physical damage, right? It's not. So I would say that you don't have to be too picky about stabs. And then of course you just want a res cap. I don't have anything fancy here. In fact, I'm gonna be replacing this chest next because I want to get one with like double the evasion rating. And the reason why I want that is because we're getting bonus energy shield from the tree based on our evasion rating. And also, of course, with our Ascendancy node, we gain a bunch of spirit per evasion rating or energy shield or both. But you can't gain spirit any other way. Which, let's segue into the Ascendancy nodes that I'm taking. I finally got my third Ascendancy, which I decided to go with I Am the Blizzard to gain percent of damage as cold damage, so I don't have to rely on cold damage from my weapon or any other sources in order to help with the freezes with Shattering Palm. And of course, we went through to lead me through grace and then protect me from harm for a lot of damage reduction of physical based on our evasion rating alone. Now, armor and evasion rating will both help towards this, but I found it nicer to just stack a bunch of evasion and get the physical damage reduction that way. Now, part of me really wants to swap to evasion rating and energy shield bases because there's a lot of synergy with evasion rating and energy shield. And you can also go with things like Ghost Shroud, the Spirit Gem. I'll show you what that looks like. This would a Ghost Dance, sorry. Ghost Dance I feel like would help a lot more with survivability, but you'd have to invest a lot of energy shield, which I just don't have. I only have like 300. I'm kind of using it as like a bonus over my life. So we're like almost like 2000 total EHP there. So that's pretty solid, I would say. I still do get one shot a lot. I want to get this up to like either 2,000 life or get like 500 shield, or even 1,000 shield would help. Now let's look at some of the important nodes on here. I'm actually not taking as many damage nodes as I feel like a lot of other people would. Most of what I'm taking are, let's cut this down to like three things. I'm doing power charges, actually four things. So power charges, anything with power charges is really good because we're using a lot of them. We're doing elemental damage. We're doing crit. And then we're also trying to scale up stun buildup, freeze buildup, and electrocute and shock buildup. Anything like that, debuffs. The reason why we want to do that is, well, for one, we get 30% increased elemental damage here if we've shocked an enemy recently, as well as if we've chilled. So that's 60% increased elemental. We're grabbing this for crit damage bonus, so that helps towards the crit, as well as the power charges. We get +1. We're getting a bunch of crit nodes here. We just get free damage from these nodes here if we've dealt a crit recently. That's what, like 80% damage or 70%, as well as some damage bonus. We're grabbing this node here, Resonance, because we can use this ability called Combat Frenzy from the Ranger tree, or the Ranger skills. It reserves 30 Spirit, and anytime that we gain a Frenzy charge, um, it basically gets turned into a power charge with this. So we gain a Frenzy charge every time we freeze, electrocute, or pin an enemy. And we're both freezing and electrocuting enemies. Now, the way we're electrocuting is by using electrocute support on any of our lightning skills. I found it easier to proc it with fast hitting things like Tempest Flurry, so we're using it on Tempest Flurry instead of damage. I think it's totally fine. You'll see me procking electrocute and freeze pretty much exactly the same rate. It's really fast, especially with the bell. Then, of course, we're grabbing these nodes up here. Gives freeze buildup, as well as hits ignore non-negative elemental resistances of frozen enemies. This is massive. This is giving us so much damage. Now, it'll become kind of unnecessary if we manage to get this and get enough crit. Sunder my enemies does the same kind of thing, but every critical hit will ignore resistances on monsters. But for now, this is a nice replacement to that because we are freezing a lot. And it double dips with this node right under it, which gives freeze buildup as well as 50% increased damage with hits against frozen enemies. So when we get a freeze, we do 50% increased damage to them. Then we're also grabbing this node here. I found really good because it gives us +2 maximum power charges, as well as another 60% increased critical damage bonus if we've consumed a power charge recently. We're stacking a lot of crit damage bonus just by having power charges and consuming them. I went down here and I grabbed stun buildup, daze buildup, crit damage bonus, physical damage. Basically, any kind of buildup is going to help us a lot with boss damage. The faster we build those meters for freeze, stun, and electrocute, the more damage we deal. Oh, I just got a sale. Let me invite this guy. That's a divine. Finally, someone buys these boots. These are godly boots. Look at these things. Crazy. So we're also going down here to grab shock chance as well as attack speed. And then, of course, crit hit chance against shocked enemies. So it helps us crit. And then we're grabbing pretty much all the quarterstaff nodes because I feel like all of these are really helpful for the build. Attack speed, uh, increased defenses, increased daze, freeze, stun buildup. That's all perfect for the build. Getting a bunch of accuracy ratings so we no longer have to worry about accuracy. Crit damage bonus. Then down here, I'm kind of doing this for now just for some defenses. I wasn't initially going to go for these, but I found that I was dying a lot, not having enough evasion rating, and I needed a lot more dex for the build. We need like tons of dex. So we came down here to grab the 25 dex and then got this 30% increased evasion rating and 8% increased dex. Percentage increase on attributes is actually massive. And then we're grabbing these because we're using both Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder because we have a lot of spirit to work with, 150. In fact, when I upgrade my chest, I'll probably be able to fit another buff on if I can find some room on the build somehow. Maybe I'll get rid of Falling Thunder because I'm just kind of messing around with it right now. But that's another 100% increased damage total. It's 50 cold, 50 lightning. We're doing cold and lightning. Just the lightning damage alone is good though. Eventually, I plan to move down here to grab attacks have increased or have +1 to base crit chance, as well as some crit damage bonus here. But it's not like super useful. I want to also get the electrocute, have 20% increased damage taken, as well as grabbing Falcon technique for a bunch of attack speed based on dex. But we'll see if we manage to get to there. The most recent thing I took was this gain maximum energy shield per 12 evasion. So the more evasion we have, the more energy shield we have just from this. I don't really need to invest in energy shield too much that way. And then, of course, getting crit damage bonus, crit hit chance anywhere we can get it helps a lot. So that's pretty much it for the passive tree. Let's go over the skills themselves as well as supports and why I'm using them. I will say that the supports that I'm using for this build aren't like set in stone. There's no like really right or wrong way that I'm like doing this. I'm kind of just messing around, see what works. For me, this is what's working, but some of you guys may have better ideas. So let me know if you guys have a better idea for these supports. But let's start with our main damage dealer. We have Tempest Flurry. Now, this isn't like pure damage. This isn't where we're getting the most of our damage from. It's actually from the freezes and the electrocutes that are giving us a bunch of damage with in correspondence with this. But we're using electrocute support, as I said earlier, to inflict electrocute buildup, which we normally can't. We're using martial tempo to give it a bunch more attack speed, so we get these crazy flurries. And then close combat, so when we're closer to an enemy, we deal more damage to them. I might change this because I find it's actually nicer to stay at range with charge staff and just use those projectiles a lot of the time. But against bosses, this is pretty good. We're using Shattering Palm here with blind. Support skills have 100% chance of blind, so that helps us get in close without getting hit. So if they're blinded, they have less chance to hit you. If we have a bunch of evasion rating, then they're probably not going to hit you very often. And when they do hit you, we have some armor to, or sorry, some physical damage reduction to reduce that damage that we do take. We're also using Frost Nexus with it, so whenever it hits an enemy, it creates shield ground underneath them that are frozen. And we're freezing enemies pretty often, so let's say the shatter doesn't kill all the enemies. Well, now they're all on chilled ground. They're ones that are remaining. Really helpful against enemies that die around bosses if there's ads that spawn. But mostly just for helping keep chilled ground on enemies that don't die instantly. We're also using Ice Bite, so supported attacks gain 35% of damage as cold damage. This basically just helps us keep a bunch of cold damage without having to invest into cold damage too much. So when we freeze an enemy with the supported skills, infuse all of your attacks with cold damage for a short time. So we use this on enemies, and whenever this helps freeze something, we gain Ice Bite. You'll see it pop up here a lot. And then all of our attacks gain cold damage, which is kind of crazy actually. It's 35% of damage as cold damage too, so like 35% of my lightning damage as cold damage basically. Not specifically the lightning damage, but just damage in general that we're dealing. Um, then up to charge staff, we're using lightning exposure just because that's really useful. I didn't think this was going to work with this because this is like a buff, but it also counts as an attack. So each time we hit with those projectiles, it procs things like lightning exposure. That helps us just do a bunch of damage to shocked enemies. And we're doing shock with just our lightning damage really alone. We also have perpetual charge, as I explained earlier. So sometimes when we have 6 charges, I use charge staff, but we'll still have 6 charges that we can use on something else like falling thunder. And then primal armament to deal 25% more weapon elemental damage with this. The reason why I have it on charge staff instead of tempest flurry is because tempest flurry is mostly there for the electrocute and the build up with the tempest spell. This is actually giving us a lot more damage with the added lightning damage and everything. We're using Herald of Ice with Cold Infusion and Precision just to keep accuracy rating up. I don't know if I even need it, to be honest. We're using Herald of Thunder with Concentrated Effect, Cooling Strike, and Innervate. I don't think I even really need Cooling Strike, but it can be helpful. Probably not great on Herald of Thunder, but just for the off chance that it does trigger. Innervate's huge though. That gives a bunch of lightning damage. It's basically Ice Bite and Innervate both work really well together if you're trying to do cold and lightning damage. With Combat Frenzy, we're getting Clarity because mana is probably my biggest problem with this build right now is just mana sustain, especially in maps right now. But this helps a lot. And then also Profusion, we have a chance to get an additional charge whenever Combat Frenzy does proc. Tempest Bell, probably the most important thing. We got the quality up to 20% with GCPs. I highly recommend doing that because it gives you more chances or more hits on the bell, which is higher DPS. So we're sitting at, instead of 18 like normal, we're at 24 hits. It's destroyed after. We're using Devastate just to help break armor in case, that opportunity ever comes up. If our hits from the Tempest Bell do break or do heavy stun the enemy, their armor is fully broken, which is huge. Persistence helps the bell stay longer because I found that just having the hits alone wasn't enough because sometimes the bell would disappear before I hit 24 times. It probably doesn't matter as much anymore because we're hitting so fast, but before it was really useful because I was running out of the bell before I could hit it enough times. And then Font of Rage is basically just giving us a bunch of damage, free damage, because Rage is free damage. Rage grants 1% more attack damage per one rage gain up to a maximum of 30, and you lose it if you haven't taken damage or gained rage in the last 2 seconds. So, just being around our bell while we're hitting things is giving us a bunch of rage, which is just free damage. That's probably the most important thing, actually, I found. This is like really, really strong. We're using Wind Dancer just to help get some more invasion rating since it scales 18% more per stage. If I manage to max the quality on this thing, we get an extra stage, which will be another 18% more evasion rating. That would be huge. Um, so whenever this procs, though, it basically does an explosion outwards. Whenever a melee hit does hit you, it'll trigger Gale Force. Gale Force says that it has crit strike chance as well as knocking back enemies on hit. It is an attack technically, so we can use things like Maim. Maim makes enemies 30% slower movement and 15% reduced evasion rating. You can put anything else here as well with it. I just found that this was fine for now. And yeah, that's basically it. I do have Soul Thief as well as Practice Combo on here just to help. If we're running out of mana, we can just use our Quarterstaff attack, which does a lot of damage still, to help build combos for the bell, as well as whenever we kill an enemy with the Quarterstaff attack. Oh, wait, actually, I don't think you even need to kill them. Oh, you just need to hit them. So it just leeches back mana from physical attack damage. So this helps a lot when you run out of mana as well. But yeah, that is the full build. Oh, I didn't go over Falling Thunder. Right now, I'm testing this out because we do sometimes have a lot of extra power charges because of the whole perpetual charge thing. So sometimes when I consume charges, I just have 6 more left. I'm using Elemental Focus with it for 25% more damage because we're not using it to apply ailments. Culmination to gain combo. Now this stacks like a bunch. I don't know if there's actually a limit to it. If you're just hitting things, it stacks like crazy. They get a bunch of damage, especially with our huge attack speed with Tempest Flurry. And then Inevitable Crit gives us crit hit chance each second up to 100% chance. So you'll see it's at 10k right now because it's at maximum. Crit chance 32%. That's higher than anything. I'll basically use this if I manage to get enough power charges and I have my charge staff up and there's a boss or a rare. This one shots rares. I tested it. I froze a rare enemy He still had like 75% health, and then I slammed him with a Falling Thunder, and he just instantly died. So far, this thing has been a giga damage increase, but it's kind of hard to pull off sometimes, especially in boss fights. I want to try to see what the damage is like if I can manage to shotgun an enemy with it in against like a boss. But it's been kind of hard to keep the charge staff going and also use the power charges with this because in a boss fight I kind of typically want to keep charge staff buff going more than I want to slam them with a falling thunder. But it does do huge bursts, so if you're kind of like getting cornered, you have some combo on it, you have some extra power charges, use this as an emergency button, it'll just melt everything. But yeah, that's the full build. So like I said, you can kind of get a lot of damage with this with just Shattering Palm and Bell plus any other damage attack. But I highly recommend trying out Tempest Flurry with Charge Staff, as well as the Heralds, Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice. It is so satisfying. And I'll show you guys some clips of some bosses and stuff that I took down at the end here so you can see what it's like. But yeah, I'll see you guys next time. I'm going to be working on this Invoker until I get to probably endgame. I want to try to get to endgame with him, see what it's like against pinnacle bosses. Obviously, melee kind of sucks in general against bosses, so it'll be kind of rough, I'm sure. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, like and subscribe if you liked this video and you want to see more. Next character I'm going to make is probably going to be either a warrior or a mercenary. I want to do a Thorns build because I got this cool helmet. Crown of the Pale King. Thorns damage triggered by all hits. It's probably a meme, but I want to give it a shot just for the hell of it, you know. So that'll probably be the next thing I try to do. Or I'll try to do a Blood Mage because that sounds fun. But yeah. Stop by the Twitch stream sometime, twitch.tv/Rathanoob. I do live gameplay of Path of Exile 2, and I have been since it launched. And yeah, later. Oh, nice. Froze him.
Oh, fuck!
What is this? Oh no, lightning!
One of them's a boss!
I did it! I did it! Oh, fuck! I perma-froze it! Oh, shit!
Nice.
Fuck yeah, Ascension!
Oh, man.